All right, folks, welcome to episode 36. Don't be ridiculous. It's been a quite an interesting NBA playoffs. We are now down to two teams left in the finals. Our team, the Miami Heat, came really close. But it's going to be Golden State against Boston starting Thursday night. And yeah, so first thing we wanted to talk about was the Miami
Talk about
Boston.
the Heat Miami series. Yeah.
Yep. Miami Boston played Game 7 last night. The game was, I've heard, the best way I've heard it described is it was torture for both fan bases because
Well, and we should say like because I'm trying before we did the last one. Was it like Game 3 or something?
um,
Game 2?
I can't
I can't
remember.
I can't remember exactly, but it was before because with games 4 and 5, we kind of thought it was over because
Right.
Miami looked like crap. I mean, Butler looked like he didn't have any lift because his knee was sore. Kyle Lowry was just not giving you anything. Um,
Right.
And so then, game 6, I mean, Jimmy Butler, 47, it was like 47, 9, and 8 or something like that. Just like an all time unbelievable game to get to game 7. And then game 7 was just, uh, you know, we were texting during the game. And in the first quarter, I'm like, it's over. The Heat are going to lose. And then by halftime, I was like, all right, I guess I got some hope. And then I was like, no, this is starting to get out of hand. And, then at the end, I thought, oh my God, I think they're going to win. And, so yeah, it went kind of back and forth. For Boston, I mean, I think it was worse for Boston though, because Boston definitely should have won this series, which they did. But I mean, they almost blew it. I mean, so it was probably worse for them because Miami, they were playing with house money. I mean, they got to the conference finals. The fact that they even pushed it to 7 games is unbelievable. So, yeah, I'm disappointed, but I mean, I think for Boston, they would have been even more disappointed because they absolutely should have won the series. They did, but
Yeah.
I guess that's the funny thing. Credit to them, I guess. A lot of people are giving all this credit to the Celtics now, and I'm just like, and it's like, yeah, I know Jason Tatum won the conference finals MVP. That's a thing now, but I'm yeah, but like, I'm not saying he was bad, but how good do you feel about it after the game 6 and 7? I mean, like,
Yeah. So, like going back to game 6, I mean, first of all time performance by Jimmy Butler. 47 points and just was he was just spectacular. It reminded me of an old school Dwayne Wade game because the way he was just attacking the basket over and over and over again.
yeah, and getting to the
Um,
free throw line.
yeah. And uh, yeah, the same. It's funny. The same issues with Boston come up for me. Watching them, it's just can they get enough offense from other guys? That game 6. I mean, Derek White had 33 points. Like he basically had one of the best playoff games of his career. And
Yeah.
but Miami had the lead basically the whole game.
Yep.
And so yeah, I feel like, and what was confusing for me, and going, talking about both games this whole series is the Celtics. With Robert Williams, they keep, they make such a big deal about him being in there because he's a good rim protector and all that. But then in the fourth quarter of these games when they needed him, he wasn't in the game. So that's one of those things that I would just
Maybe they're trading it for offense. I don't know.
it just confused me that it's like, okay, why wouldn't you want this guy in the game? Like their end of the game lineup was basically, now part of it was Grant Williams was in foul trouble, but it was just one big. It was just Al Horford out there with Miami's playing small because they don't really have any other options. And so that just I find that interesting, especially going forward in the next series, is Boston going to play big or not? So yeah, and then it's just surprising enough that Miami won Game 6, and you wondered how much are they going to have left in Game 7, and I mean they
They kind of didn't at first. I mean,
yeah,
they were behind. They didn't lead. They never had the lead, and they couldn't. They started off. Their offense was awful. I mean, they couldn't hit. I mean, uh, it's. I kind of reached the point where I guess I can't criticize Bam Adebayo anymore. This is just what
right,
he is. I mean, and on Hoops Tonight, Jason Timpf was talking about it, that Bam was killing the Heat because they would throw him these pocket passes, and it's like, dude, you can't hit a floater. Like PJ Tucker can hit that floater, and you can it was kill, and he still had a good game.
Right.
You know, he still ended up hitting some shots, but it was like there were points in this series where I literally felt like there was a lid on the hoop for the Heat. Like they would just throw stuff up and it would just bounce around and clang out. And even Bam Adebayo, some of the shots he made, it had to like hit the rim and then bounce off the backboard, or hit the rim and hit the other part of the rim and then drop in.
Right.
So it just felt like I didn't have a lot of confidence in a lot of shots were going to go in, except for when Jimmy Butler was shooting. So, it was just, you know, they were behind the whole game. I was kind of thinking it was over because I didn't think they could come back, but Boston can't really blow anybody away.
Yeah.
They just, either because they don't have enough offense for it, or they make stupid mistakes. Or a combination of the two. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And you know, to your point on Bam, like it was getting to be, I was laughing out loud during the game because it's one thing for guys to miss threes. Like I get that. Like now, you know, these guys should be able to make a better percentage than the Heat did, and that's kind of how the way, you know, the series went. But Bam is shooting shots that you should be making 55 to 60% of the time. Like he's shooting 6-foot shots in the lane and he can't make it. It's just like, you know, and then he started to make a few in the fourth quarter last night. But it's one of those things as a fan, you have no confidence the shot's going in. You're thinking so it's just amazing when you can't make those shots. How do we expect? But you know, every time the game was basically on the edge from the first quarter on. The game was basically on the edge of, okay, if Boston has another 10-0 run, this game is over. But it kept teetering on the edge, and the Heat would make a run. They finished the second quarter. They're down by 6 at halftime, and you're going, how is this happening?
They played like shit. They missed like 8 free throws.
Yeah,
like that's the game right there. If they made like 3 of those, they might have won the game.
Right.
You know, and then freaking Kyle Lowry. I mean, good God. He was pissing me just like committing stupid fouls, using up the timeouts. Just, you know, and there's times where he had good looks and he's missing shots, and I'm just like, what the hell did we get you for, dude? Like, and then, you know, granted he's 36, so it's kind of like, I guess, you know, whatever, but.
Well, I think, you know, first of all, I mean, I give, yes, I get it. He's older, but I give him a little bit of a pass because he definitely was still injured, and he was definitely not 100%, but that is what happens to older players. But I think that the problem was, you know, when Kyle's not scoring, all you're left with is all this bullshit that he tries to do, where he tries to draw fouls and run into people and take charges that are completely unnecessary. And he's flopping around all over the place. And it just exposes that, oh, wow. When you take away his shot making, it's like, man, what's left?
What are we doing? Yeah, exactly.
You know, and he is good to have on your team because he has the point guard mentality, and he gets you into the ball goes to the right place if he's out there, but it doesn't do any good if nobody can make any shots. So, well,
the other thing that I wanted to point out, and this is kind of my thought process when I'm watching a game and like an NBA game, and a team is behind when you start getting to like 2 or 3 minutes left in the game.
Right.
You know, when you're behind, because they were behind with 3 minutes, they were like behind by 13 or something, or 11. I can't remember exactly what it was. And so I'm watching it, and I'm in my head, I'm thinking, okay, the only way the Heat can win, they literally have to make stops, make shots, and basically they can't make any mistakes.
Right.
You know, they can't give up some easy basket, because if they do, they're not coming back because there's not enough time. And it was ridiculous. Boston they were taking some bad shots. Sometimes they were missing shots. Miami just kept getting every single rebound and going down the floor, and then like 2 points. And then Strus hit a 3, and I'm like, oh my God, are they going to pull this off? You know, and then like when Butler got that rebound and started coming down the floor, I'm like we were down 2. And so I was like, okay. And then he's going, and I'm like, okay, he's going to drive to the basket. And then he stops and pulls up. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, it's going to go in, you know, and it you know, he missed on I think it hit the side of the rim.
It hit the front rim.
It hit the front.
It was just short because Butler played 46 minutes in Game 6, and he played the entire game in Game 7.
Yeah.
And so it's like the guy had no legs left. So, you know, it just led to a, you know, which is honestly, it's a really stupid sports debate today about whether he should have taken a 3 or tried to drive to the basket and shoot a 2. And it's like, look, man, we could analyze this every way you want.
Everybody's playing the result.
Right.
Honestly, everybody is playing the result.
Right. In the moment, I was thinking drive to the basket, you might be able to get fouled. That's what I was thinking watching the game. And then when he pulled up and took the shot, I was like, oh man, I don't know that I would. But it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, if it goes in, like nobody cares.
Yeah, like we don't like Giannis shooting threes. And in game 5 when Milwaukee came back against Boston, Giannis took a three and he made it. And that was, if he didn't make that, they probably wouldn't have won that game. So it's kind of like, yeah, don't take. Oh, you made it, okay. And so I understand. Like everyone's going, well, it wasn't the exact right basketball play, and I think that's a little that analysis is a little misleading. In a close playoff game at the end, when there's all this pressure on you, trying to get like the absolute right, perfect play,
right,
it doesn't always happen. So basically, the way I look at it is, in the moment I was kind of like maybe he should have drove, but then he put up the shot. But basically, look, he took the shot with like 18 seconds, and then like 2 seconds ran off before Boston got the rebound. And so at that point, you're thinking, okay, we're down 2. We've been struggling this whole game. We're kind of on a run, and I'm right here. I'm wide because Horford was backing off. I'm wide open. I got a really good look at the basket. I hit a few threes in the last game, and also Nick Wright pointed this out on First Things First. In the first half, and it doesn't look the same because they were obviously playing. They were going in the opposite direction. Jimmy Butler did that. He pulled up on the wing and took a three and nailed it. Okay, so it's kind of like, look, I've been playing the whole game. I'm really exhausted. Kyle Lowry's struggling. Bam's not making shots. Like we've got a shot here. Just take it, okay? And if he makes it, he's the hero. He missed it, and now people are kind of criticizing it. And it's like, I get it. His game is more mid-range, but in the playoffs, his 3-point percentage actually went up a little bit. Right. And like I said, he made one other one in the game, and I think he took a few other ones that he missed. But it's just one of those things where it's like, I get, make the right basketball play, but then think about it. Okay, the idea of him getting fouled. Usually refs don't like calling fouls at the end of the game.
Right.
Okay, so say he goes in there and makes a 2. Okay, fine, you get a 2. Boston's got like 16 seconds, and at that point, wasn't Miami out of timeouts?
They might have had one left.
But I can't remember because Kyle Lowry took that one timeout and really screwed him over.
Right.
So at that point, it becomes, okay, well, you make it 2, the game's tied. What if they go down and score? Okay. And then it's like, okay, then you got to maybe get a tie and you probably go into overtime. And, it's just one of those things where you got the knockout punch right there if you hit that shot.
Right.
So I can't, it's hard for me to just go, oh, you shouldn't have taken that shot. It wasn't the exact right basketball play. There are other times where people take shots like some sort of wild shot where someone's got a hand in their face or whatever. I mean, for instance, in the 2016 finals when the Cavs beat the Warriors, Kyrie Irving took a step back 3 with the score tied at like a critical point in the game.
Right.
If he misses that shot, you're kind of like, what are you doing taking a step back 3?
Right.
Yeah, granted, it's Kyrie Irving, but still, it's like, So.
Yeah, it was a much more difficult shot than the shot Butler had yesterday.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have no problem with it. Like, look, man, like the Heat are struggling like hell to even stay in this game. They really don't have any business, this still being a game at this point with 16 seconds to go or whatever it is. And so yeah, I have zero problem with it. You're watching it, it's disappointing that we needed that. We were maybe one shot away from winning the game.
Like I said, when there were 3 minutes to go, it was basically, okay, the Heat, they got to get stops, they got to make shots. They literally can't really make any mistakes because there's no time. Well, and so they almost did it. Well, literally, if he makes that shot, like they're almost there.
The other thing was Boston basically just kind of conceded, at the end of the game. They stopped really playing the way they were playing. They stopped attacking. And, Jeff Van Gundy has brought this up on the broadcast more than once with Boston, that at the end of the game, they just like, all right, we'll just milk the clock. And they don't really play any kind of decent offense. And it's like so the Heat are just double teaming Tatum every time, and Marcus Smart had, I don't know, 2 or 3 wide open threes that he couldn't make at the end there that basically would have sealed the game. And
Yeah.
Boston on the defensive end, Boston just letting Miami go to the basket.
Yeah.
Kyle Lowry had a
Well,
layup.
some of that was Boston was missing shots and Miami was hustling the ball up the floor to try to get numbers and get out in transition a little bit. And I think that was part of the reason they were able to come back.
Yeah,
But that's Boston's fault for taking bad shots.
Well, yeah, and there were 3 minutes left, and you're just letting. It was kind of like a matador defense. You're just letting Miami go to the basket and put the ball in, and it's like, why would you do that? It's just kind of like and you've seen this before. Whenever they have the lead at the end of the game, they're like they don't know what to do. It's like, why are you, so, and this leads into what I wanted to talk about was this would have been an epic collapse for the Celtics to lose this series.
Yeah.
I mean, this would have been right up there with, unbelievable choke jobs because, they basically, game one, they basically gave away the game in one quarter. Game three, they gave up 19 steals and 25 turnovers. It's just like, what are you doing? All they have to do is just hang on to the ball. And, they can't, and by the way, they can't dribble. So they have enough of an issue with that. That's what they need Marcus Smart. It's just so funny. They need Marcus Smart to dribble the ball up the court because they don't have anybody else who can consistently do it.
Yeah.
So this would have been just. And Miami almost pulled this off. This to me, like you just, I don't even know what you do if you're a Boston fan. That just would have been such a rough loss.
Well, I thought it was the game ends right, and whoever the lead announcer was, it wasn't Mike Breen. It was someone else. Mike Breen got
Mark
COVID.
Jones, I think.
Hopefully he's okay. Anyway, but then Mark Jackson, he says, "Congratulations to the Boston Celtics." Now remember, the game just ended. Mark Jackson goes, "Congratulations to the Boston Celtics, but you've really got to tighten things up at the end of these games because they almost gave this game away." Okay, so dude, at the end of it, he's not even like celebrating the Celtics that much. He's literally pointing that out like immediately, like, "Hey, you guys almost crapped the bed." I mean,
they had 18 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It's just like it's really disturbing. So, the other thing I want to talk before we move on to the finals, I wanted to talk about Golden State because I have to do a little apology here to the Warriors. I've been I don't want to say down on them, but I've been lukewarm. I'll say lukewarm to the fact that they were championship contenders, the past couple of years. Now, obviously, 2021, there were injuries, so that's a little different. Klay Thompson wasn't going to be able to play, but this season, I was questioning the Warriors the whole time, and I'm watching them play Memphis, and I'm questioning it, but I was looking at it through the lens of what if they have to play Phoenix, and so that didn't happen. So once that didn't happen, it was kind of like, oh, okay. I think I liked where Dallas was at, but I thought, it wasn't surprising that Golden State beat them. But I think that I need to give them a little bit of credit. Golden State ran through this in 5 games, and they were awesome. They were awesome on defense. Their offense was fantastic. So, I have to give them credit for that. And well,
if Memphis had more experience, maybe maybe that series ends differently.
Yeah, and like I've heard today, like people questioning the the matchups or questioning the teams at the finals that Boston and Golden State played. And, Golden State played Denver, Jokic without the other 2 guys. They played they played Memphis and John Morant was injured. And they played Dallas and and I think you could kind of say the same thing about Boston. But I feel like
people can play that game all they want. I could literally put an asterisk next to like every NBA champion. You could find some. Like last year, Milwaukee they beat the crap out of the Heat in 4 games. They played Brooklyn. It took them 7 games, and Brooklyn was all banged up. They played Atlanta, and like they struggled with them, but then Trae Young got hurt, and that kind of helped them. So it's like it's one of those things, and you can kind of go back through that with every Every champion and every team that reaches the finals, like there's varying circumstances, and you just get through the thing. And we've talked about this before. The thing you got to be careful of not doing is just going, well, because they won the championship, I'm going to now assign all these qualities to this team, you know. And it's not that you can't do that, but you got to be careful, like, because like we're saying about Giannis, I kind of feel like the same about him than I did before, you know. Like they won the championship, so he's obviously going to get that credit. I mean, obviously he played well in Game 6 of the finals last year, but it's like, you know, we're going to say he's so much better because he won the championship. We kind of assign that importance to winning rings.
Yeah, that's kind of how that goes. And you know, I have some legacy questions that I want to ask, but you know, first of all, let's do a little finals preview. You know, I think that I mean, my initial thoughts are that, you know, after watching, you know, I mean, I was saying this in the third or fourth game of the Boston Miami series that I don't see how Boston's beating Golden State. I just think they don't do enough things well, you know, and you know, so my first question is you know, all I've heard the whole postseason is the Celtics defense. Celtics defense is awesome. It's the best defense in the league, and you know, all of this stuff. And listen, you don't get to the finals without playing good defense. I'm not saying it's not of a decent quality. But to me, you know, you look at the offensively challenged teams that Boston played. You know, they played Brooklyn. Brooklyn was a bit of a mess. You know, they had really no continuity.
Brooklyn. I mean, statistically, Brooklyn had a really good offense throughout the year, but that's just because they had Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
Yeah. Then they play Milwaukee. Milwaukee's not a staggering offensive team when they have Middleton.
Exactly.
And they didn't have Middleton. And then they play this broken down Miami team, which, you know, we didn't know who was playing night to night. We had guys missing games, you know, all over the place. So I don't know. I feel like their defense is good, but I feel like this you know, great word that's being used, or this historic, you know, defense idea is just, it's kind of ridiculous.
It's going to be a huge adjustment playing Golden State because Golden State doesn't play like anybody else.
Right.
They don't do as many ball screens, like they don't, you know, and there's so much movement.
Right.
You know, so I think it's going to be like playing defense against Miami. Okay, fine. You got Butler to worry about, and then the other guys, you know, you're not really sure who's going to make shots. You know, and Milwaukee, it's kind of like, all right, well, you know, Giannis will try to make it tougher, and the other guys will see what they get. I mean, it's, you know, how tough is it? So, well, no, it was tough, but it's, you know, we got to be careful going too far about using words like great and all that. I just think it's going to be a huge adjustment playing Golden State. Now, maybe over the course of the series, they can sort of figure it out. And, you know, if you want to look at, like, Steph isn't shooting as well as he did in years past. Wiggins has never been here before. Jordan Poole's never been here before. But I don't know. I kind of feel like that doesn't matter as much because Golden State is so, like, they trust their players so much, and they go like right. 8, 9 players deep in their rotation. So I kind of feel like that's, as the series wears on, that's not going to matter as much, you know, but we'll see.
Yeah, I just, you know, going into it, I mean, my first concern is Boston going to be able to score enough? Because, you know, Miami really, you know, maybe Miami's defense is really good, but they limited Boston a lot, and they made it really tough for Tatum. And you saw it in you know, in that game, like, it's funny, like, how ridiculous this is. Like, if Boston loses, Tatum just gets criticized, even though Tatum was always making the right play. Like, whenever he got double teamed, he hit the open guy. He was doing exactly what you should do when you're being defended like that. But Boston just doesn't have, you know, they don't have the offensive firepower to take advantage of that. You know, yeah. It's just when you're hoping, you know, you're hoping Marcus Smart and Al Horford are going to make threes, they're hit or miss. You know, so yeah, I just think that's my first concern. Like, I feel like, you know, over the course of the series, you know, Boston will make more mistakes, especially when we're talking about offensively. And, you know, now, listen, that being said, the Warriors do screw around a little bit. They will turn the ball over. they will, and they've done that forever, even when they were winning titles. Like that's kind of how they operate. So, my initial thought is that I think, especially over the course of the series, Golden State will just has more answers than Boston does.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think Golden State will have an easier time finding good shots. Yeah, and I just, again, with Boston, they just kind of, in a close game, or just in a game where, like, maybe they get behind or something, Golden State could just put you away.
Right.
They have that kind of firepower. With Boston, I don't necessarily think that Boston can really put anybody away. So you could jump out to a 10-point lead, and that's not safe against Golden State. They could come right back pretty fast, too.
Right.
So, like, yeah, I think I'm going to go, like, Warriors in 6.
Yeah.
Just because, Boston's obviously a good. They reached the finals. They're a really good team. So they're a really good team this year. So we'll see. But I'm kind of thinking 6 games, because that way I think Golden State can probably jump out to a lead, get up like 2-0, or maybe get up 3-1, and then drop a game and then finish it off. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I think I heard so the few previews that I've heard from some other people, it's people seem to give Boston more of a chance than I do, which I can understand that. I think that we're kind of in a new NBA right now, because there's no great team. Like, I heard Colin Cowherd compared it to the NBA in the 70s, where other than basically for 10 years, I think the Celtics won 2 and the Knicks won 2, and every year was a different team winning it. And there were no like, oh, this team's unbelievable, they're fantastic. And we just went through a decade, 2010 to 20, where it's the Heat with LeBron, or the Warriors with, Steph and Kevin Durant, or Cleveland with LeBron. We went through this period where there were these ridiculously dominant teams, and right now we don't have that. So I think I have to probably make the adjustment to, what wouldn't have gotten you to the finals, 3-4 years ago, now could win you the title. And I think last year with Milwaukee kind of showed that, like, Milwaukee's good team, but not great, not historically not blowing anybody's doors off. And, they won the title. So I guess we have to kind of change our thinking from, we've got to beat this incredible team, to, what it is now, where it's, you put a good team together, like, you got a shot.
Yeah. So that kind of, I guess, as Heat fans, maybe that's hopeful. It's like, okay, you guys, if you can find some way to get another star player, then.
Well, but they almost made the finals the way they are.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. They still need more on offense, but yeah, exactly.
Right. And
maybe not another star player, but just more offensive firepower.
Well, and if they'd had everybody healthy, who knows?
Potentially, yeah.
They might have gotten that, because, Hero was out, the last 2 games. Lowry missed the first 2 games. If they'd have had, everybody. Now, granted, when you have an older team, that doesn't happen as often. So, right. Yeah, so this would be a very interesting. I think this is going to be a great series. This will be a very interesting champion, whoever wins, because Boston, to win the title like this would be amazing. What a turnaround for them. They finally, like, you got to give, and that's where I don't want to be too hard on Boston, because I got to give them credit for what they did this season. They had an incredible turnaround in one year. They went from, we're not sure about them, to, man, they really have found something. It seems like they got a good thing going, and I think they just need, but I think Boston has the main parts. They just need to supplement, with more guys. That's been my biggest concern about Boston the whole playoffs, is, do they have 5 guys that you can put out there that can do everything you need to win the championship? So I think they just need to. Right. They just need a thing here and there. One of my long-standing sports takes has been that, I have a hard time putting Steph Curry in the top 20 NBA players of all time. And, I I get where he's, risen. They did the top 75 list or they did a list, not the 75th anniversary team, but it was a year or two ago, and it was one of ESPN's list, and they put Steph Curry above Kevin Durant, which I just have a huge problem with, and I don't know that Golden State winning this title is going to change my mind, just because Durant's a better player. But what I really wanted to bring up with you was the way we look at players all time, and how we judge them basically on championships, and we elevate and lower guys based on the number of championships they got. And so I just think when ranking players, looking at a whole guy's resume, right? It's like when you're ranking teams in college football, right? You take all of it into account. You take their talent level, you take their schedule, you take the the statistics, you take all the things into account, and it's into one thing, into a composite, right? So you're combining all these things together. When you're doing, the best players of all time list, yes, individual success is part of it. Team success is part of it. The actual, like, watching you on the court, the way that you play, the things the things, strengths, weaknesses, all of that stuff. All of that stuff comes into play. And I just feel like sometimes it's a disproportionate amount to, well, this guy's got more titles than this guy, and it's like, if we're just going to rank titles, okay, fine. Then we'll just put Bill Russell 1, Jordan and Kareem, second with 6, Kobe and Magic at 5. We could just go down the list if that's what we're going to do. So I just think,
that's tough to do because it's like, look, if you wanted to say that you think Larry Bird was a better player than Magic Johnson, I'm like, all right. I mean, Magic's got more titles, but I mean, Larry Bird was still unbelievable. Larry Bird still had 3. It's really hard to figure out how to do that, because at the same time that we elevate someone who's won titles, we downgrade someone who hasn't won any or who's only won 1.
Right.
And I think I brought up to you, like, Kevin Garnett as an example. He was in Minnesota for all those years. He somehow dragged them to the Western Conference Finals one year, and they lost to the Lakers. But yeah, it's kind of like, okay, then he goes to Boston and he wins the title, and they get to the finals 2 years later and they almost win. So it's like, well, if he was on that kind of team in his prime, like, would he have more? And then we're kind of, and then it's like, and then you have to think about the amount of luck or good fortune of certain players being drafted in certain places and those organizations being able to assemble a good team.
Right.
I mean, like Tim Duncan would have been great no matter where he was, but he won 5 titles because they ended up drafting Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker, and he also got to play with David Robinson for a few years. So that's why he won all those titles. He would have been great anyway.
Right.
So it's kind of one of those things. How do you separate it? And it's very difficult to separate the two. Right.
Yeah. And to your point, if you put Garnett on the Spurs, he's probably got more than 1 title.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is where I feel like we get into this stuff, and we're too dependent on how many championships did you win. And Steph Curry gets the benefit of playing with Kevin Durant. They won the 2 titles with Durant. He won 1 without him. And so that's the part. Like, so there was an argument on ESPN on NBA Countdown before the game last night, and they were saying, if Golden State wins this title, Jalen Rose is saying, well, then Steph Curry should be above Kevin Durant. And Stephen A. Smith was like, what are you talking about? Like, there's no chance. Like, Kevin Durant does all of the things Steph Curry can do, but better,
Yeah.
And so, and I generally agree, and it's like, and then they make the argument with Kevin Durant. Well, he joined that team that had already won, and so like, I don't like measuring championships by this one was easier, or this one was with Kevin Durant. Well, he joined that team that had already won, and so I don't like measuring championships by this one was easier, or this one was harder. It's it's just ridiculous.
No, okay.
Hi, Jeremy.
What's up?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so I think as far as this finals goes, I think yes, does it add to Curry's legacy? Absolutely. But it doesn't, to me it doesn't change my mind that I'm just having a really hard time putting him above Kevin Durant and putting him above. It's hard for me to how do I measure him against like Dwayne Wade or Isaiah Thomas from back in the 80s with the Pistons. Like it's hard for me to figure that out. And I think that, like if you take away something from Kevin Durant because, well, he joined the Warriors, well, then what about the first championship the Warriors won when, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love were injured in 2015?
right.
Like, you could make this argument any way you want. But to me, I
mean, and remember, like Kevin Durant, you put, he was on Oklahoma City and they made the finals. And then they made the Western Conference Finals a few times.
Yep.
So, and if you just swapped places, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, Steph Curry wouldn't have been able to do that.
Right.
No offense to him, but it's just kind of it's very difficult to do. It's really difficult to do this because how do you separate out stuff? That's why I think people should just kind of, if you want to come up with the 20, 25 best players, you can kind of do that. But again, it's difficult because you're going to end up leaving people off, and it's just, can we just kind of agree? I mean, I think for the most part, people can probably kind of agree on who the like greatest players of all time are. It's like Jordan and LeBron and like, I don't know,
Kobe,
and then
Magic, Wilt, Bill Russell.
Yeah, Shaq. You put Tim Duncan on there. But then it even gets weird because then you're like, well, who else do I add? And you're like, well, this guy's only got one title, but he's really good. I remember watching him play in his prime. He was really good. So it's one of those things. It's the perfect topic for sports talk radio and for debate because there's no answer. Right. It's completely subjective. There's so many different things, and you ask 5 people and they could have 5 completely different answers about who, is Steph Curry better than Kevin Durant, or who's your top 10 of all time? Like,
yeah. I give Steph. Yeah, listen, Steph's unbelievable. Like, there's no debate about him being one of the greatest players ever. It's just it just gets it. Unfortunately, when you're doing this, you have to leave somebody out, put somebody else ahead of somebody else, which becomes kind of a.
I think it would just be better to sort of rank players in each era.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was kind of. We got a comment on the YouTube channel about the greatest players. It was what is you don't see guys in the post anymore, and how the defense is completely different today, and it's hard to measure. So I kind of think I'm starting to think we gotta put the NBA, because it's been around for 75 years now. I kind of think there's 3 kind of eras you got to put them in. I think it's before the merger, before the ABA NBA merger from 1946 to 1976.
Okay.
And then the modern NBA is basically to me, it starts really in 1980, but I'm going to include from the merger because that's when you had all of the players finally in the same league. So I think from the merger to about, 2010, because to me, I think when the Lakers played the Celtics in the finals in 2010, that was really the last major playoff series where, all right, we're playing big guys. You know what I mean? We're playing Pau Gasol and Andrew Bynum, and we're playing all these guys, and so, we're going to guard the rim, and this is going to be how we play. After that, things kind of started to change. Small ball started becoming. I think the Suns kind of started it in 05, 06, 07, and then the Heat with Chris Bosh playing, shooting threes, kind of changed, kind of made the big first kind of shift. And then I think the Warriors basically took it to a whole other level. So that to me, that's kind of my thought process is, I kind of think you kind of have to, if you kind of figure out where the modern NBA is, and you could probably do the from the 76 merger to about 0304, because that's when they changed the hand check rules. But it still took, like, I don't know if you remember the Cleveland San Antonio finals when the games were still in the 80s. It still took till about 2010 to start to change the league.
Yeah.
So it's like I think,
because in the 80s and the 90s, it was still really those were pretty similar.
Yeah.
I guess you could say maybe the skill level of some of the players increased, but it was still when the Lakers had the Kobe Shaq dynasty, that was and then around that, the Lakers dynasty was sort of bookended by the Spurs winning championships, and they were playing at the beginning. They were playing David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and then they're playing Tim Duncan a bunch. So yeah, it's just you kind of got to compare eras and then compare guys in their era.
Yep.
And it's just tough to do it in different eras because the game is so different.
Yeah, and I think if you tried to like divide it up, I think you would go from the merger to basically when Jordan retires. I think that's about where the changeover kind of happened. I think you could kind of go from 0304 and then from 0304 to now. I think that would basically, like, if you're going to divide it up, that's kind of how I would do it. Yeah, because if you think about it,
the Suns were in that era, and they were shooting. I mean, they were shooting more threes than other people were. They still weren't shooting as many as now. But yeah, that was kind of a starting. They were starting to shift over, and the Suns would have won the championship if not for
right
that infamous Game 4. Excuse me.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see if the Celtics try to play big in the finals, and what happens with Golden State. Do they really try to go? Because I get the idea, but most of the time, all right, we're going to play big. It usually doesn't work. Like where we are in the NBA now. Like if that's your plan, it's kind of hard, and it's like going back to the bubble. The Heat played the Lakers in the bubble, and I remember. Some of the arguments, well, the Lakers are so big, they're just going to blah, blah, blah. And it's like the Lakers didn't win because they were bigger. They won because they have LeBron and Anthony Davis. I hate to, it's not just a size thing. But, so yeah, before we go, I just want to do a little postmortem, just some ideas I have about, what's going to happen kind of in the off season. For the Heat, they basically, they have to decide, what are they going to bring back PJ Tucker and Oladipo kind of on pretty cheap deals because they're not going to command a lot of money. The question is really going to be what to do about Tyler Hero. He's still got 1 year left on his deal, so they could give him an extension if they want to. But it kind of comes down to that. But yeah, they need, Miami's got to figure out a way to score more. So I don't know. It's like, and they don't have a lot of room to improve their roster. They are under the luxury tax.
Yeah.
But
just looking at like free agents.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of restricted free agents, like Zach LaVine's name has been floated around, but the Bulls still have his bird rights.
Yeah, Zach LaVine's not.
Bradley Beal is a free agent, I guess.
Well, he's got a player option.
Player option, I see.
Yeah, so he's still. Yeah. So there's not going to be there's really.
You want John Wall,
right? And he's not, he's still got a player option. Yeah. So there's not really like a amazing free agent to go get. I was looking at some of the off-season stuff on Bleacher Report. And one of the things they said is, Miami tried to trade for Bradley Beal, and, so my first message just in general about a lot of this stuff is, this isn't a, the NBA, like, trying to get better players on your team. It's not like a deli. You can't just walk in and go, yeah, I'd like some ham and some cheese, and can I get some pastrami, and I'll have it on the white bread. You can't just, so it's like, it cracks me up, like watching, Colin Cowherd's show, where it's just, it's really hacky sports radio stuff. We're just going to throw names out, well, what if they got, who would be perfect? And it's just like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, this is not Subway. This is more like Jimmy John's. Like Subway, it's just like, all right, I want this kind of bread and this kind. It's like, no. At Jimmy John's, you just go in, they have a menu, and it's like, this is what we got. It's like, okay.
Yeah. So it's just awfully confusing to me that it's like, in the offseason, it's like Dallas, maybe are they going to get Rudy Gobert? Are they going to get, DeAndre Ayton? And it's just like, guys, all these people we're talking about are still under contract, so it just becomes really difficult.
You want Ricky Rubio?
Yeah, coming off an ACL injury too.
Oh, great. Yeah.
But so for Miami, I don't know what the move is. Like, they do have some tradable contracts, but it's kind of funny. Like, the value on some of these guys is completely plummeted. Like, they got Oladipo basically for nothing. And, it's like, and listen, I was saying the whole series, boy, they got to play Oladipo more minutes. Well, we found out why. He can play about 20 minutes, and that's about it. It's like he at that point he starts to, it starts to wane, it starts to fall apart on him. So I hope I think it'd be great, since if the Heat could get him cheap, I think it'd be great to bring him back. Because I like him as a bench player. Same thing with Tyler Hero, but it's funny, like Tyler Hero, you could have used him as in a package to get James Harden last year. And now I don't know what he would get you.
I'm kind of glad that they didn't do that, I guess.
Yeah. It worked out, but it's like, and now they may be able to keep him, on a much cheaper deal, but it's just kind of like, boy, I don't know. And then for, moving over to Dallas, since they're out now, first of all, for Dallas, like everybody forgets, they're getting Tim Hardaway didn't play in the playoffs because he was injured. So That's a really nice thing for their team. I don't know. The major issue for them is, are they going to be able to re-sign Jalen Brunson? And if they do that, who do they have to trade in order to do that? But I will say I do like where Dallas is at, a lot better, because they have some tradable contracts. They have guys that they could be moved and much better deals and much easier to move than it was to move Porzingis. So I feel like, like if it were me, like if you were asking me, like I would try to re-sign Jalen Brunson. I'd trade Dinwiddie if I have to, because, Brunson's younger, and I don't think we're not talking about a max player here, but he's going to make it, he's going to make a decent amount of money. And, if you can figure out, like just a team with wings, everybody's looking for athletic wings, 3-and-D guys, and Dallas has got Finney-Smith and Bullock, and they got Hardaway coming back. So that's a really nice core. I think, and I think we jump to conclusions on this stuff. Well, Dallas lost. Well, they got to get better because they got to win the championship next year. Dallas doesn't have to win the title next year. Like, they don't need to put all the pressure on, we have to make some huge move. They can build this for the next year or two to get out.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is, I don't see what move is out there. I just, looking at the free agents, it just seems like teams are going to make moves on the margins, and maybe some of those will end up working out really well. Maybe some of those will be like, oh, wow, I think that was a really good, this guy fits better on this team, and he's giving this team what they need, and that's helping them, ascend a little bit. They can be a little better. So, yeah, I kind of feel like there's going to be moves on the margins. And, for instance, Russell Westbrook, who really cares? If they trade him, they're just going to trade him to some bad team probably that's got cap space, if they can actually do that, because there's only so many teams that have enough cap space to trade for him. So it's like,
like I said, I think it's a new NBA. I don't think we're going to have super teams for a little while. I don't think, because there's no group of players that are trying to play together. There's no we could go do this. I feel like players have done that, and the players now, I just don't think there's that mentality. So Bill Simmons of the Ringer had Jalen Green who was a rookie, last season, on his podcast, and basically like he was talking about like him and Anthony Edwards are really good friends, but he brought up like, are there guys you wanted to play together with, and no. He's like, no, we were kind of all doing our own thing. So I think that generation may be over with, maybe for a little while. Because I don't feel like these young guys, I don't feel like that's how it is for them. Like John Morant.
It's not just the young guys. Like Damian Lillard, like people are like, oh, people should trade for him. He's never asked for a trade.
Right. Same with Bradley Beal.
He's maybe said some stuff about the team, like I wish they would do a better job, but he's never asked for a trade. So anybody like thinking, oh, he's going to get moved. Okay, how do you know? How do you know that? Like,
right.
Same thing with Bradley Beal. People talk about that, and we've talked about that before. It's just like, okay, if you're not going to ask for a trade, then nothing's going to happen.
Well, he's given Bradley Beal's given every indication he wants to stay there. Yeah. So maybe he does, and I think it's kind of, I don't, whether it's good or bad, whatever how you feel about it, but I think it's interesting that seems to be the place we're in with a bunch of these guys. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, Zach LaVine is kind of the major free agent, who could go somewhere if he wanted to. And it'll just kind of be interesting to see if that happens, and how this works. But yeah, I think for Dallas and Miami, like, I don't think there's any rush to try to make some huge move. First of all, I don't think there's a huge move out there. So this is why one of the reasons I have a problem with all the sports media just throwing things is just there's no indications like, oh, well, we got to get a guy like this. There's nobody out there. There's not really like, oh, we're going to get Zach LaVine. Well, that's going to elevate us. No, there's no LeBron Durant level player out there right now. All these guys that are out there are like nice guys, second, third best player on a championship team, maybe. So yeah, I think everybody should be patient. And, you brought up Russell Westbrook, so we can talk about this, for the Lakers for a second. But like, if it's me, like if I'm the Lakers, if I have to, I'm buying him out. Like, I'm not bringing him back. He's got 1 year left. I'm not bringing him back. I'm just not doing it. I get the idea that, well, you tell him, all right, you're coming off the bench and that's the end of it. Like, you could do that if you wanted to. You really want to put up with that? I don't think Westbrook's going to be conducive to it, number one. I think it's just going to be a problem. So just get him out of there. And everybody's like, oh, well, they can't accept. What does it matter at this point? He's got 1 year left. Like, don't worry about trying, well, we got to get something for him. Yeah, you can get something, but you're not going to get anything great for him. So just pull the trigger on it. And I think even if they had to attack.
I kind of think they're going to end up moving him. Like, I understand what you're saying, but I kind of feel like they're going to move him before the trade deadline, because some other team is going to be willing to take on whatever's remaining of his salary, or at least
just to get off
of it.
Just to get
and
off
then
the
they'll
money.
have some other guys on their team. They're like, we don't really need these guys. Let's get them out of here, and so that way they can ship them out of there, and maybe something like that.
Yeah, he does become more valuable as an expiring contract, but right before the trade deadline. I see your point. Yeah. But I just think it's going to be really hard for them to keep him through the season. We'll see how it goes, but we don't want to spend too much time talking about the Lakers because they're basically a non-entity at this point.
It doesn't really matter.
They hired Darvin Ham to be their coach, which congratulations for him, but that's a tough first gig.
Congratulations, you're going to be the Lakers coach for 3 years.
Yeah,
give or take.
That's a tough first gig, man. That's all I got to say. That's a tough deal. But yeah, I just think the Lakers just I think they just got to get him out of the building. Just get him out of there. And even if they had to say, you know what, just stay home, we'll find a trade for you eventually. I just don't think, I don't know that there's any value to him being on the team. But then again, the Lakers don't really have the luxury. They don't have enough players, really. He probably has to play.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we'll wrap up here. I think I'm hoping for a really good series. I think, these two teams are talented enough that they could make it a good series.
Yeah.
If they play well, but I'm hoping for a good series, but I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic, but I just feel like if Golden State plays anywhere near where they're capable of, I just feel like it's going to be overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, and Boston just has not. I mean, after 3 rounds of the playoffs, I don't know why. It was funny. Like Stephen A. Smith was on First Take, and he's like, he's like, yeah, I don't trust them anymore. I don't trust them at all now. I mean, they didn't do anything to sway me. Like, I still have huge concerns about them moving forward. And everybody's like, oh, well, they made it through. It's like, okay. I mean, yeah, they made it through, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to Colin Cowherd was saying today on his show, like he was more impressed with the Heat than he was with the Celtics after the series was over. And I tend to agree. I was texting you as I'm watching the series going, there's no way Boston's beating Golden State. Like the way they've played in this series, and it's just like the turnovers and
well, after game 1, how is it that they had game 3 where they kept turning the ball over like that? Yeah. It's like very obvious that Jimmy Butler's like, well, and the other guys, they're watching passing lanes and like they're getting their handsy and they're swiping at the ball all the time. Like, what are you doing? And then of course the same thing, like in game 6? Yeah, where Lowry and Bam Adebayo kept getting the ball stripped from them by guys coming up behind them.
Yeah. That was really disturbing, but
yeah,
it's much more difficult for a team like Miami who doesn't have the margin for error to turn the ball over like that, and it's funny, but I just feel like, that's the other thing. Like, I feel like Boston will have 2 or 3 games in the series where they just turn the ball over. And if you do that against Miami, it's one thing. You do that against Golden State, they're gonna go on an 18-2 run on you. Like it's you cannot turn the ball over on when you're playing Golden State, because they will turn it into points immediately. So it's it is kind of disturbing, that Boston struggled that much. But yeah, listen, we got 1 series left. Hope was harder. It's just ridiculous.